That's Drew,
And that's Mike.
and that's Dylan Johnson.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Great, man. How you doing today?
Good. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being on. For our listeners, we're here with Dylan Johnson, and he is a cycling coach and a competitor specializing in ultra endurance mountain and gravel racing. With a subscriber base on his YouTube channel of over 85,000 subscribers and nearly 6 million views across 102 videos, Dylan has built a community using a scientific and research-based approach to making content about the sport of cycling. Be sure to check out his channel for answers to questions like how music affects your riding speed or how to train for high altitude rides, and follow the links to his website for more info about coaching and training plans. And once again, thanks for your time today, Dylan.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's going to be an exciting one. I think you have an interesting story we were talking about before we started about how fast your growth was. But before we talk about YouTube, let's talk about you growing up, right? So you're from North Carolina?
I'm actually originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Northern Virginia. So it's pretty different in that it's, I grew up in the suburbs right outside of a major city, and now I'm kind of in a more rural area, but I prefer it here.
And so growing up in the DC, Virginia area, it's got to be a little bit different than what you're used to riding in college and today. A lot more hills and a lot more, I guess, texture of the earth.
Yeah, so I mean, DC, there's obviously a lot of traffic there. So if you're road riding, that's something that you got to contend with. If you're mountain biking, I mean, there's parks where you can ride, and if you drive far enough outside of the city, there's some mountains, but it really doesn't compare to like the Pisgah National Forest, which is a 10-minute bike ride from where I currently live. There's a lot more climbing, a lot more gnarly descending. There's a lot more back roads if you're road riding. So, I mean, when I came down here, this is some of the best riding on the East Coast. So I fell in love with it pretty quickly.
And so growing up in the DC, Virginia area, what was your childhood growing up like sports wise? Did you fall right away into cycling? Like when your dad or mom taught you how to ride a bike, was that like that was it, or did you go through some other sports growing up?
Yeah, I think the first sports that I played was soccer when I don't even know how old, younger than 10 years old. And I don't even think I liked it very much. But I think when I was 12, I got a mountain bike for my birthday, and my dad rode mountain bikes, so I'd go out with him. Really enjoyed it, got super into it. I think I started racing at around maybe 13 or 14. And probably around 15 is when I got super into racing and started training more. I found some older friends that were, super into training and racing as well that I would ride with. And they were pretty big role models for me at the time. And yeah, I would say most of my teen years, I was pretty obsessed with cycling, like even throughout high school. I ran cross country in high school, so that was the high school sport I did, but I cared way more about cycling than I did running.
What is the competitive circuit like that for at that level? Because, like for cross country, you can just go sign up at school.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, that was very visible. But something like that seems like you have to go search it out or have role models or people that that are maybe connected to it already. How did you end up in the competitive circuit? What was that like for you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was, there's a fair amount of junior racing. Any time you go to a normal race, there's usually a junior category that I would compete in. But I also, from a pretty young age, got into ultra endurance mountain biking, like 100-mile racing. I think I did my first 100-mile race when I was 15. Really fell in love with that. Did a lot of ultra endurance type events, and those usually don't cater to juniors. Like they usually don't have a junior category, and there's not very many juniors doing them. So I would just compete with the adults. And so yeah, I mean, it was kind of something that I was always like the younger, you know I was always the kid in the group of, and most of the people I was riding with were adults. So
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting in that sense, I guess.
And so how do you go from casually going on bike rides potentially with your father
Mhm.
to, you know, going into more aggressive like racing? What's that like? You know, what's the path like there?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I found some older friends who were super into the more competitive side, and then I think, you know, uh, I, there was a local race series at the place where I grew up riding. Like I've probably done thousands of laps at this place that I'm thinking of. Wakefield, for anyone in the DC area, is the place I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Wednesdays at Wakefield series. Um, that was the first that was the first mountain bike race I did, and you know, I mean, when you start racing and you kind of catch that bug, you know, you start looking for more races, and you start getting competitive and looking for advantages and seeing how you can improve your training and all of that. So sort of a slippery slope after that first race.
Yeah, so the first bike you got was when you were 12. And then when you really got into racing, how did your technology change from 12 to 15 from the first bike, or did you keep that bike to your first race?
No, I had a couple different bikes. I mean, I rode a single speed for a while when I would say maybe 13 or 14. When I got more into racing, I think I was on, you know, some race hardtail for a while. Probably around 17, I got on a full suspension bike, um, like a pretty lightweight full suspension bike. I was kind of a, I mean, I would still call myself a little bit of a weight weenie. And for those who don't know, a weight weenie is a cyclist who obsesses about the weight of their bike. But I was actually more of a weight weenie when I was younger. I've started to care less and less about it over time.
Why is
Interestingly
that?
enough.
Because typically
Um,
it goes the opposite. As you get older, you're trying to cut more and more weight, right? Like ounces are going.
yeah, I don't really know why it is. I think that, you know, I think I'd rather focus on things that are more important, like, you know, the training that you're doing, or I've been getting more into aerodynamics as I get into gravel racing. Um, like I used to not even think about that at all. And I still care about weight, like don't get me wrong, but I'm not, you know, I'm not like putting in like 3 rotor bolts when there should be 6 or something like that.
So Wakefield, it sounds like you're going to do laps to do a race. So, you know,
Mhm.
you're continually going around the same track. Is that typically how cross country racing is, just like a cross country course, or is it sometimes an out and back, or what are the courses like?
Yeah, so cross country mountain bike racing is typically, you know, a bunch of laps. Like the at the pro level, they'll do, I don't know, you know, 5 to 7 laps of a fairly short course over an hour and a half period. But I was also getting into like I said, 100-mile mountain bike racing, and usually for those races, it's actually just one giant 100-mile lap. Like there are exceptions to that, but so it really, I mean, it really depends on the race. Like some of these super long gravel races, it's just one enormous, you know, 100-mile, 150-mile, 200-mile lap.
That's got to be a totally different feel for someone who's grown up in the traditional cross country style, because like you must be so calculated on that course, knowing exactly the lines to take through that, so you just kind of get methodical about it. Where when it's 100 or 200 mile course, it's especially where it is, it's not like a running race, like a marathon where you can drive the course and understand, you know,
Mm,
where certain things are, the elevation changes. You probably don't get to do that on a mountain bike as easy.
right.
So how do you prepare for 100 mile versus a traditional cross country race?
Yeah, well, you can pre-ride bits and pieces of the course, usually like the beginning section or the end section. But yeah, a lot of times you are kind of doing it blind, especially if it's a race you haven't done before. So, you know, I don't know. You probably ride a little bit more cautiously on the descents than you would if you know had already done 5 laps of that exact same descent. You know, it helps to study the elevation profile before you actually jump into the race. So, you know, if you're on a climb, you roughly have an idea of how much longer that climb's going to last as opposed to just having, you know, no idea and no way of gauging your effort. And you know, like for example, if you know there's 5 major climbs in the course, then you know if you're on the third climb, you're roughly halfway through. Um, so you know, it helps to kind of study the course beforehand if you're jumping into a long race.
Do they give you like a packet about the race, like in some detail, or is it more so like you're going on Google and reading notes from people who have already done the race?
They almost always have some sort of course information. I mean, a lot of them have like a GPX file, and you can look at the exact elevation profile. Um,
That's pretty cool.
yeah,
So you're in high school, you're doing this on the side, racing, but you're also, a high school student doing cross country. And then you graduate high school and you find yourself at Brevard College in North Carolina. How did you determine that is the school you wanted to go to? And what was the transition from, going on the outside of your life, mountain biking, to now being a college student with a mountain biking or a cross country biking team?
yeah. I mean, you know, I think the reason that I chose Brevard College had very little to do with academics and way more to do with riding my bike.
Yeah.
um, like the at the time and still the Brevard cycling team. I mean, they're multi-time mountain bike national champions, and the riding in this area is amazing. Like I said, probably some of the best on the East Coast. So, you know, I was all of those factors weighed super heavily in my decision. So I ended up coming here and you know, um, the collegiate racing scene. You know, I was just talking about 100-mile mountain bike racing. That's not part of collegiate racing at all. There's none of that. It was just standard cross country mountain bike racing, which was fine because at the time I was kind of trying to see if I could make it in cross country mountain bike racing, and eventually I would shift more back towards ultra endurance stuff, both on the mountain bike and on the gravel bike. But yeah, I mean, in high school, I didn't have any friends that rode, and then I came to college, and all of my friends rode.
Hmm.
So, and they were serious about riding too. It wasn't just like a hobby for them; it was like a lifestyle for them. So that was super cool.
Yeah, how did that change your own approach and your own mindset towards the sport, being in that different of an environment? Sure, it's a lot more pressure too.
Yeah, I would say that the collegiate racing was fairly low pressure. I mean, the until you got to the national championships, which is kind of the race that matters for collegiate racing. But yeah, I mean, it just made it more fun. I mean, there were people to ride with. There were constantly people to talk about bikes with. You know, I we all lived together. I mean, it was kind of like being part of a fraternity, even though it wasn't a fraternity. So yeah, I mean, I loved it. And a lot of those teammates of mine, I'm still great friends with. So
Very
And
cool.
so, like you find yourself there. How many schools have a team that is cross country cycling or a gravel cycling team? Because I think there's both disciplines in college, right?
there's the three main disciplines in college are mountain bike racing, cyclocross, and road. So yeah, there are not a lot of schools that have teams, and most of the schools that do have teams are the pretty small private schools, because the big universities care way more about like you know football and basketball and whatever. than they do cycling. So yeah, it's definitely a unique type of school that has a good cycling program. It's not a typical university, and there's not a lot of them.
And you didn't get like a easy major either. It's not like you skated by to get a degree, and I don't even want to say anything that's easy because someone's gonna get that major and get mad. But
uh,
you know, you were a kinesiology and exercise science and a psychology and physics. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's like you were literally a jack of all trades, but basically how the body works, how the mind works is how I see that.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I mean that exercise science path, that's something I'd always been interested in since I started cycling because obviously I got into training at a pretty young age and I was reading like books on how to train for cycling when I was 15. So that was a pretty natural step. And then, being an exercise science major here in Brevard, CTS or Carmichael Training Systems is a pretty big coaching company in the U.S. and one of their locations is in Brevard, and I got an internship with them because you need that kind of major in order to work there as a coach. So I got an internship there my senior year of college, and then that kind of naturally turned into a job with them when I graduated um, as a coach. So I started working at CTS, and I was using my degree, and that was great. And then I would say 2 years after that, I left CTS and I started my own coaching company.
I meant to ask you too to kind of backtrack a little bit. And since you mentioned it and you also mentioned coaching, I was curious what your side, being an athlete or being a client, you could say, but your own training evolution from starting reading books on your own at 15 years old, teaching yourself how to
Mm-hmm.
train for cycling, how that changed in college to sort of where it is now and how you look back on it. But kind of just in general, talk about your evolution and your very analytical approach to training, to nutrition. That's very apparent with your channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say in college, I mean, most of the stuff that I was learning in college, was it was more of the physiology, like it wasn't so much that we were learning how to train a cyclist to become a better cyclist in college, but I did learn a lot of physiology. Um, Most of that came from some of my own research before college, and then when I started working for CTS, they have a coaching college, and I learned a lot there working with them. And then clearly, if you watch my channel, you know that I do a lot of my own research. And I when I'm making a decision about training for cycling, or really honestly a decision about anything, I always refer to what the science has to say, and that's something that I've done for a while, and that's something that I incorporate in the channel and with my own training. I don't necessarily know when I really started doing that, but I would say that there's probably a couple, you know, influential people on YouTube that do that I really gravitated towards, and that's kind of like the style of channel that I wanted to have.
Yeah, you're one of the only people that I know, other than maybe Drew, that is actually using their degree. Right, most people
Mm-hmm.
go and get like a marketing degree, and then they work at, I don't know, Starbucks or something. And
Right.
not many people graduate college and actually use their physical degree or what their discipline was. But it makes sense. Most 15-year-old kids also were not reading how to train for cycling, right? Mountain biking, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're reading, I don't know, cartoons and uh,
Right.
other things, listening to music, going out. And so, you're at college and you're getting your degree. How do you choose the paths within that? Because you're pretty wide, right? Most people would stay with kinesiology and exercise science in that major. Why did you take classes in physics and psychology?
I would say that those are just more so subjects that I'm interested in. Always been interested in psychology, always been interested in physics. I just like those two subjects. And I mean, it's not that you could even say that as a cycling coach, you use a little bit of psychology and a little bit of physics in what you do. I mean, there's certainly aspects of that in bike racing. So
Yeah, so I was going to ask. That's kind of why I was leading the witness a little bit there, and how often are you using the psychology that you've learned to help your athletes? Because I feel like in the past 10 to 15 years, or maybe even less, um, a lot of college teams have started to bring on sports psychologists. And
mm,
that's something that's changed. I saw that my high school, I think, is doing that now. We have a pretty good high school team. And I know that a lot of college, especially in the big sports, like you said, if you're going to football, basketball, those college teams have a psychologist on staff. So are you using that to help your athletes themselves?
yeah, I mean, if they're if they're asking specifically about um, you know if they want help with that, I'll help them with that. I would say that I'm far from a sports psychologist. I mean,
Right.
I minored in psychology, but I did a whole video on mental toughness in cycling, and there's a lot of psychological tricks that you can use, while you're hurting out there on the bike to kind of make it go by. So yeah, I mean, there's you know, there there are definitely aspects of psychology in both training and racing, and if my athletes are curious about it, I'll help them with it.
Yeah, I could even see it being in so many ways of your experience that the date of a race, right? You're obviously training people who want to race and get the better. And it's not like, oh, I want to ride a little bit longer tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
You maybe even just helping them with race day preparation on mental health, like get there, it's just another day, those kind of things. Because I feel like a lot of people, especially in the masters world of either triathlon, biking, running, or racing, they can put in all the hours they need to, but the day they get to the race, they become a totally different person.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. And I mean, um, you know, nerves on race day is a big thing. Usually in people that are less experienced with racing, but it can be pretty nerve wracking to do a race if you're not used to it. So I mean, that's definitely something that you got to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, all of the things that you're major in college, I can 100% see a direct correlation to your channel itself because you're using all of like the same journals I'm sure that you were introduced to in college. And it's not like you're Googling things, you're using actual medical journals. You manipulate and not manipulate, you can break down the information very clearly and bring that out. I feel like that comes from your coaching background too. It's a very interesting channel, especially if you're into cycling, right? Like
Mhm.
it's very very specific. So um, I think the only kind of other question about what we would call your collegiate world is how was the transition from your college level racing to now focusing away from cross country, going to these longer endurance races? What did your training look like that changed? What did your lifestyle, how did that affect you? Like, was it an easy transition or was it a little bit tougher?
Yeah, well, in college, I was still doing races outside of collegiate racing through my whole college career. I was still, it's not like the only races I was doing were collegiate races. So, I mean, as far as that transition goes, it wasn't even really a transition. It was just kind of like, okay, well, I'm graduated and I don't do collegiate racing anymore. But uh, I think towards the end of my college career, I was getting much, much more into longer distance races again. And by the time I graduated college, I was kind of all in on ultra endurance races. So 100-mile mountain bike races, and then more recently, long distance gravel races, like anywhere from 100 to 200 miles. Um, and as far as my training goes for that, you're probably spending more time on the bike. You're doing longer workouts that are more specifically geared to uh, spending 7 hours racing as opposed to an hour and a half. A lot of that hour and a half cross country racing has a lot of really punchy, sharp efforts. Not that you don't do that at all for these longer races, but there's probably less of that.
I mean, you had a very good collegiate career. In 2013, you got third in men's Division II cross country. So like you were a very successful athlete as well. That obviously has transitioned now to today. So you're running a YouTube channel, you're coaching individuals, and in 2020, you grew your channel significantly. I don't know what that number is, but I'd like to know. But you also got fourth place in the BWR Cedar City race, and you've won first place in the Sugarcane 200, so a 200-mile race you won. So
Mhm.
transitioning into YouTube, like how do you balance all of these plates spinning at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult. I already said how, I try to get a video out every week, and that, it usually ends up being a video every 8 or 9 days, I would say. And then the last video I released, I think it was a full 2.5 weeks, which is the longest it's ever been. But I was just training so much. I hardly had the time for it, and then when I had the time, I hardly had the energy for it. So, um, but I don't know. It's always kind of a struggle to be super productive after you've been on the bike for 5 or 6 hours.
I can't
um,
imagine.
but I actually coach relatively few people. I think I only coach like seven athletes, which for a somebody who's that's their job is being a cycling coach, that's a pretty low number. Like I worked with people at CTS who coached, I would say average would be 20 to 30, and then there were some people that were coaching like 50 athletes, maybe 60.
Wow.
Is a lot. I think the highest I ever had when I was working at CTS was like 25 athletes. But the reason I coach so few athletes is because I got all this other stuff going on. And I got a lot of people contacting me for coaching. But you know, I just don't have the bandwidth for all of that. And I get most of my work done from a coaching side on Mondays. I make my athlete calls, I adjust training plans, all of that. And then, the rest of the week is working on that week's video and doing a bunch of training.
I'm curious what led you to make the decision to sort of leave CTS and leave that sort of established infrastructure, established network, established coaching method. I'm sure they have all those things set up already, and go off onto your own. What made you want to go start your own coaching program?
Right. Yeah, so I started my YouTube channel while I was working at CTS. And at the time when I first graduated from college, I needed CTS because CTS gives you, if you don't have a name for yourself in the coaching world, they give you athletes to work with. So you're not quite starting from scratch. That being said, they didn't give me a lot of athletes. Like it was still, I would say like the first summer that I worked with CTS, I had maybe 5 athletes, which is, I don't know, roughly $500 a month.
Well,
Um, like that first summer that I graduated from college, I had that very small income, but I was also like paying my bills by going to bike races and winning prize money. And then that was like my rent for the month.
Nice.
a little bit
um,
of pressure there.
yeah, it was, but I'm sure everyone has that experience of barely scraping by, when they're first off on their own. Um, but yeah, but then when I started the YouTube channel, it started gaining popularity, and all of a sudden you know, I had a lot of people contacting me for coaching, and before long I had a full coaching load, and I was turning down people, and I realized that I didn't really need CTS. The one thing that you know the one thing that pushed me to make the big move was I made a video on Amp Human sodium bicarbonate lotion. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but for anyone who's not familiar, sodium bicarbonate is a potential performance enhancer. The problem is that it can upset your stomach. So this sodium bicarbonate lotion, bypasses the stomach by rubbing it directly on the skin. So, you put it on your legs and it potentially increases your performance. So I did a video on that where I reviewed the science on sodium bicarbonate, and then went into some of the research that this company Amp Human did to show that their product worked. And I looked closely at the studies, and I was not really convinced. I didn't say that it didn't work. I just said I would say at this time the research is inconclusive. That was enough of a negative. And I should step back and say that this company Amp Human was partnered with CTS. So um, that was enough of a negative answer that I got a call from Chris Carmichael, the CEO, and he was not happy about that video. So,
oh wow,
I think, and that actually wasn't the first time that I got in trouble for making a video, and I was just like, I don't think I need CTS anymore, and I definitely don't need them, telling me what videos I can and can't make. So I was, you know, I was ready to leave at that point, and
yeah.
shortly after that, I did.
So why when you're working at CTS, what was the motivation to start a YouTube channel? Because typically when people enjoy what they're doing and are successful at growing their clientele base when they're at a job, they aren't looking for an entrepreneurial way out of that role or position. So what was the motivation to start YouTube?
Right. Well, like I said, I mean, CTS gives you clients, but they weren't giving me a lot of clients. Like I think when I started the channel, I had maybe like 10 or 12 athletes. Um, so I don't know. I was living off of, you know, maybe $1,500 a month. Um, and I was like, I gotta somehow advertise myself. And I'd thought about making a YouTube channel for a while. It's not like on a whim. I was like, let me pull out my camera and film a video. It was actually I probably did like a month's worth of research into how to make a YouTube video before I even made my first one. Um, so yeah, I mean, when I started it, it was a way of advertising myself as a coach.
Yeah, because even your first video from 2 years ago, you have a lot of like basic. Typically when we look at someone's channel, the first couple of videos are like just like a weird thumbnail. There's no consistency. But if you look at your videos, there's significant consistency. Good titling, good draw, good action, good image. So what was the research that you did that drove this, as well as I I guess let's start there and then I have another question. So
Yeah, I mean, before I even posted a single video, I was watching videos about how to grow a YouTube channel. And they were talking about you need good titles, you need good thumbnails, you need to be able to hold your viewer. Um, they talked about, kind of how a YouTube video should flow, and so, yeah, man, when I go back and watch those videos from 2 years ago, I cringe because my presentation skills aren't as good. The lighting isn't as good. The audio isn't as good. The editing isn't as good. But, I would say that for somebody who's had no experience making YouTube videos, they were pretty decent. Um, and it was just because I didn't just like set up a camera and kind of like say whatever came to mind. I mean, I had a script for that first video, you know. So I would say from day one, I think I asked people to subscribe in the first video, like from day one I was thinking about that.
you're thinking of it as a business. And so,
Mhm.
you know, my question about why YouTube, because I feel like there's other ways to brand yourself within this day and age, right? I feel there's like a lot of people are using Facebook to create a brand within it. You do that as well, or Instagram, or using your growth in Strava to, highlight yourself and say, I'm coaching here. There's so many other avenues. So why not focus on those where there might be a bigger viewer, or, if it seems like cycling might be, I don't know many master cyclers who are using YouTube. A lot more, 50 plus males and females are using Facebook. So like I just wanted to understand like why the choice for YouTube as a medium.
Um, yeah, I think that, I mean, out of all the social media platforms, uh, YouTube is by far my favorite. Some people don't even consider YouTube social media, but I don't know.
We do.
It, yeah. Um, and I think that, I think there was an interesting study actually. Um, Almost all the social media platforms lead to lower self-esteem. Um, Instagram being the worst, and the exception to that is YouTube. Which, I mean, you could probably see why, because YouTube, you're watching videos from creators, and not everybody on the platform is a YouTuber. Most of the people on the platform are just viewers. But anyway, that's kind of a, you know um, sidetrack. But I mean, YouTube, like I watch a lot of YouTube myself, so um, I was partial to YouTube, and I kind of wanted to do it myself. I mean, I guess I could have gone down the Facebook route. I mean, I already had an Instagram page set up for my coaching, so I guess I was sort of trying to do that on Instagram, although I wasn't trying very hard. At least not nearly as hard as when I got on YouTube. I kind of put everything into it, but I would say that's more just because I'm a fan of YouTube.
That I think is, once you're in the community, it is the second largest search engine in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the most people are looking for a video there, and I can imagine it is a large one. I just, I would be, I mean, honestly, I would do the same thing. I just wanted to understand the thought process, because that's exactly why we're sitting where we are, because we love YouTube. So, and we
Right.
want to understand the choices and decisions behind each YouTuber, and the reason why they use this platform versus another. Um, but that is interesting. I liked what you said right there, because you said, I looked at a study, right? It shows exactly the analytical side of you. That's like, oh, I didn't just make this choice. It was calculated to the point of, I'm looking at studies to determine exactly if I should or should not use the medium. So
Yeah, and I mean, granted, I don't think there's a lot of studies on I don't know, YouTube versus Instagram versus Facebook. I don't there probably are, honestly, but I just that was just something that I read that I found fascinating. But yeah, as far as anyone who's a fan of my channel, um, like when I'm making decisions about you know how to train better, or even like how the world works, I'm seeing if there's research on it to base my decision off of. I'm not just going off a whim or how I feel.
yeah, and 2 years ago too, you since the medium was not writing out your thoughts in like a blog, you were doing it in a video format. 2 years ago, I don't even think any other social media platform had a video within it. They would always link to YouTube videos. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you were going to say Facebook's my medium that I'm going to use, you'd still have to post a video onto YouTube to get it on there. Now Facebook has their own internal attempt to create
Right.
YouTube, which I think is going to, always just link to YouTube videos, but that's not here or there.
I hope, yeah, I hope it doesn't get as big. I'm not, I don't know. Facebook is I'm Facebook's fine, but I would much prefer that YouTube stay the hub for video creation.
We as well, we understand it and we use it frequently. So first year you post, right? The first video you post, you put it up there, and you start to get views. How long did it take you to break the 1,000 subscriber, which is like a big milestone on YouTube?
Right. Yeah. So I think the first video I posted, which it was about weightlifting for cycling, I think, you know, it probably got 200 views within the first couple days. And that's mainly because on Instagram I had a decent following just from my own racing that I do. Like, you know, a lot of people followed me on Instagram from racing. So, and when I posted that I made a video on YouTube, I think a lot of people went and checked it out. Um, and so for about a 2 month period, I was posting videos, and I would say they'd get maybe 100 to 200 views per video. Um, and I think I was at like 200 subscribers after 2 months of doing that. And then I posted a video about Zwift training plans and workouts. And for those of you who don't know, Zwift is like an online cycling training platform. It's kind of like a virtual cycling world where if you're, you know, doing indoor training, you can ride and chat with people and do their workouts. And I don't really use it very much personally because I don't do a lot of indoor training, but people who do a lot of indoor training, it's super popular. And they have these workouts and training plans. And I think somebody commented on one of my videos, like, "Hey, Dylan, what do you think of these workouts?" And I was like, I'll take a look at them. And I looked at them and I was like, wow, these are horrendous. Like, they're terrible. And I was like, this, you know, and I responded back saying that to that guy. At the time, I answered all the comments because there were enough comments that it didn't take up my whole day. Now it would take up my whole day to answer all the comments, so I don't do that anymore. But
Yeah.
I was like, you know, this probably deserves a whole video because people, you know, a lot of people are using Zwift. So I decided to make a video on that. And that, you know, I guess viral is relative. Like that video, I think has close to 200,000 views right now. And for some channels, that's nothing. But I think within the first week of posting that, it had 40,000 views, which considering that I was getting an average of like 200 views per video is really big. And I think in that first week of posting that, I had 1,000 subscribers.
So just kind of that video is what started the whole threshold, and that has 210,000 views now, 660 comments. I'm looking at it right now. So
Yeah.
what's that like, right? You're used to like your threshold is like, hey, I got like 400 views, maybe 500 views the first day. I'm doing good. This is a good video for me. And then you post the video, go on a bike ride. 5 hours later, you come back and has 10,000 views. What was your thought process there?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about YouTube is that if the YouTube algorithm kind of gets a whiff that this is a good video, it'll just, I mean, it'll go crazy. Like it's not like, it's interesting because I feel like the you know, for example, like the click-through rate, which is how often people are clicking on a video, which heavily influence how much it gets recommended. Like if the click-through rate is only 1% higher, that doesn't mean 1% more people are going to watch it. That could mean 10% more people are going to watch it. And if the click-through rate is 5% higher, it could mean that 100 times more people are going to watch it than would normally watch your videos. Like the YouTube algorithm will really push something that you know, people are enjoying and clicking on. So but yeah, when that video popped off, I mean, I was trying to answer all the comments, but the comments were coming in super fast. A lot of those early videos, I think I say in the video, like, you know, if you have any questions, just leave it down in the comments. I'll be sure to get to it. Like I said, I don't do that anymore because I'd be answering comments all day. But uh, yeah, it was kind of a crazy time, and around that time too, a lot of people were coming to me for coaching, based off of just watching that video. So, you know, it was exciting.
I mean, it seems like that was a big turning point because, 210 there, then I don't know the timeline of your posting at this point, but then two videos from then, you have how to lose weight for cycling the right way. That has
Mhm.
168,000. Then two videos from that one. You have another video that's how to raise your FTP for workouts training plan, 169,000. So it seemed like you started to get on a roll there. And what I'm kind of getting to is how do you determine what the videos are going to be for the next week? Or do you keep a note on your phone? Are you reading the comments and saying these people are asking these questions and, oh, that's a good video idea, I'm going to put that down? Like, how do you plan yourself ahead of time?
Yeah, it's, I'll take people's suggestions into consideration. I got a list of videos to pick from. I usually try to pick topics that are going to be popular. Like a lot of times people will ask me to do a video on something that's very obscure and that probably very few people care about. And while that might make for an interesting video for those few people, um, I'm I don't, I'm not necessarily going to spend my whole week working on a video that's going to get significantly less views than a more popular topic. Um, but and the thing is, it's hard to determine what is going to be popular and what's not going to be popular. There have been times where I'm like, oh man, this video is going to be the next big one. This video is going to be the next viral video, and then it's just an average video. It gets average views. um, so it can be hard to determine, but I don't like. Some people will ask if I have these videos stocked up and like ready to post every week. That's completely not the case. I A lot of the times at the beginning of the week, I don't even know what I'm doing a video on, and then I decide, and then I do it. It's not like I have 5 videos in the queue ready to go.
So how long does the research per video tip average take?
Depends on how research heavy it is. Like some videos, I don't do any research. Like if I'm talking about my bike setup, um, that probably doesn't have any research in it. But if it's a research heavy video, I mean, it could be, I don't know, you know, 4 hours of research, 2 hours of writing a script, an hour and a half of filming, 3 to 4 hours of editing. So it's a significant amount of time to make a video.
Yeah, as well as, riding the bike 6 days a week, other
Mm-hmm.
than Monday, which I like that you said that because we're recording on a Monday. And you said, oh, on Mondays it's my rest day. I'm like, oh, that makes sense because you can get so much of the work that you have to get done, and it's a rest day, so it forces you to sit in a chair, maybe get some of that work done. It's pretty interesting.
Right.
One question I have about the channel is it seems that you have a couple characters, that yourself with a hat, yourself with a backwards hat, talking back and forth. How did that come out in the videos?
Yeah. So the main character is backwards hat Dylan, which is just me with a backwards hat, and the I think that I I mean, I wasn't doing that from day one. I would say probably it was early on though. It was probably maybe 3 or 4 months in. I just, you know, I started to notice that people, if I was ever, a little bit humorous in my videos as opposed to just straight information the whole time, people would comment on that and people would enjoy that. So I was like, I gotta work some humor into these videos so that it's not so dry. So I think one video I just decided to kind of work this like backwards hat character into the script, and from that, like, there were people loved that character from that first video, so I just decided to keep doing it. And and I've made probably 4 or 5 videos at this point that are just backwards hat Dylan talking, and basically backwards hat Dylan is like the I would like essentially what he's doing is he's saying dumb things that are, either like bad training advice or but I would say more than that, he's doing is he's being like the stereotypical cyclist who cares way too much about the weight of their bike, who spends, um, thousands of dollars on a new bike that weighs less when they, probably have, some weight to lose off their body instead. He's like the kind of cyclist who is constantly going after Strava KOMs as opposed to actually training correctly, constantly making excuses for why he got dropped, that sort of thing.
I see a lot of those things very much in some of the other videos. Like the character that you just described is exactly who is in every one of the videos, so it's very consistent there. Is there any plans to add any more characters to the channel?
I don't know. That might, I mean, there might be. I think that I would say the only time there was like a different character was I did a video about training if you're an older cyclist. So, training as you age. And I had backwards hat Dylan, but he was like, I used like the face app to make myself look really old. So it was like old backwards hat Dylan. And I also did like an old person voice. And I think that video was really popular. So I think there were a lot of people watching that video who'd never seen my content before. And I got comments like, why are you making fun of old people in a video about old people? Like, and I was like, that's not really what I was doing, but whatever.
Is that one? How much does age affect your cycling performance?
Yes.
That's you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was someone. I have a question on my list of. So who's the guy in this video? Because I didn't. That's a face app. That's insane.
Yeah, it's just called Face App. If you ever have some time to kill, just download Face App and you can play around with making yourself old, making yourself look like, you can see what the female version of yourself looked like, or if you're female, the male version of yourself, or whatever. You can make yourself have makeup, you can make yourself have facial hair, you can change, all this fun stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, how about your set? Can you walk us through the set and the choices? Because sometimes the bike changes on the set, but the background is always the same.
Right. So a lot of cycling YouTubers, they're like filming while they're riding, and they're or they're changing locations constantly. And I am, when I'm riding, that's like training time. I'm not gonna pull out a camera and start talking. I'm not into that. I'm not like so from like day one, like if I was filming, I was filming, and if I'm riding, I'm riding. I'm separating the two. But so I think the original videos I filmed in CTS, but it wasn't long after that I made a set at my house to film at. And that set is actually in my shed. It's not in my house. If you look around at my shed, it's just wood paneling, and that's the only panel that's painted white. Um, so, and then I have my race numbers up there, just to kind of like, I don't know, I guess remind people that this is like a performance cycling channel, and that I clearly I have experience racing. I put my bike up there to same thing, just remind people this is a cycling channel. For a long time, I just used, I don't know, cheap lights from like Home Depot, but then I finally got some nicer studio lights, with the screen in front of them. So the light was, I don't know what the right word is, just diffused. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was diffused light as opposed to super harsh light. So, if you look back at the older videos, you can see how terrible the lighting was. but and I still film with my iPhone. I don't actually have like a nice camera or anything. I do use a microphone. Some of the old videos, the sound quality wasn't very good because I was using the audio off the iPhone. But yeah, that's about it.
Hey man, Mr. Beast started with an iPhone and he used it for like 2 years, so there's nothing wrong with it. It especially this
I'm
day
at
and
the
age.
2 year point.
Yeah, this day and age.
Maybe I need to upgrade.
No, the iPhone has a better camera than most things that you're gonna go and buy anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, I think that like I think the camera quality is probably fine. I do look at some other YouTubers and I'm like, man, they're whatever they're doing with their lighting or their, I don't know anything about cameras, so which is funny because I'm a YouTuber, I guess, but I'm like, whatever they're doing with their camera or their lighting, it just looks amazing, and I wish I knew how to do that. And I've tried to learn how to do it by watching videos on it, but which is what led me to get actual lights. But I don't know. For now, that's what I got.
it's all
So
about the layer.
what are some of your favorite YouTube channels or creators to watch?
Um, like lately, I've been on like a Vsauce kick. I've just been like binging on Vsauce, which I know he's not really even a current YouTuber. He was more like a couple years ago. He was big, but I watch a lot of like podcasts too, like H3H3 or Andrew Schultz's channel,
Oh yeah.
comedian. It's funny because I'm not naming any cyclists right now. I actually don't really watch very many cycling YouTubers, to be honest with you. Um, every once in a while, a GCN video will pop up that I'll be interested in checking out what they have to say. But um, yeah, I don't watch a lot of cycling content on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's your way to relax and get away from anything
Yeah.
that's already on your mind, right?
right, right. Yeah.
So let's that's one of our final questions. The other ones that we have are from your Instagram followers. Um, and we actually had some great questions from them. Thank you for reposting us.
Mm-hmm.
So let me pull a couple of them up. And in advance to all those who submitted questions, and if there's a question is picked, sorry if I butcher your name. Last 2 episodes ago, I really butchered someone's name, and they messaged me and they laughed, and I'm glad that they thought it was funny. So, um, so for someone who's looking to reach XC nationals, where's the best relocation for lots of cross country racing?
In the U.S.
I'm gonna guess yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I can look at his profile and maybe let's give it if you could move anywhere, but if you could move in the U.S. or versus anywhere.
Well, I guess I would have a better idea of the answer if it was in the U.S. If this person lives in another country, I don't know. I can't help them because I don't. But I mean, I don't know. In the U.S., I would move to a place where the mountain biking is really good. Like for example, I moved from the D.C. area to Western North Carolina. That's a perfect example. But um, seems like I don't know, the mecca for cross country mountain biking in the US is probably Colorado. Like a lot of the super fast cross country mountain bike racers live in Colorado. Probably probably a good place to be because there's also a lot of good riding there. You know, Utah, Arizona, um, a lot of those more western states. It's a difficult question because I don't know where you currently live.
I think
You know,
his name is Tyler Booth. Booth Mountain Bike MTB. I think he's just looking for if you could move anywhere, where would it be for the best cross country?
probably Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, here's a question that I wasn't going to ask, but I will. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have. I'm going to butcher this name. Showen Wetter Athlete said, "Are you planning on doing some mountain bike racing in Europe?"
I'm not opposed to it. I don't have any plans to do that this season. But yeah, I'd love to go to Europe and race mountain bikes.
I'm sure
Um,
it'd be awesome to go to like the Alps or something.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I think they have a stage race there. That'd be super cool to do.
Yeah. And then Ian Schwing asked, "Do you ever get bored of being in zone 2 all day?"
No, I don't. I love it. I love doing zone two all day. I
I,
could do zone two all day, every day, which I do.
well, I mean, from another like a triathlon or a running standpoint, you have to run in zone 2 to get faster. It's the weirdest
Mhm.
thing to think about. Like you're always like, "Oh, I got to run faster to get faster," but actually you have to build your threshold to become a better racer. So every time you
There you
increase
go. That's
zone 2,
what I talk about on my channel. Yeah.
of course. Um, so should this is from sharkbait.rides. Should a master's age guy bother racing cyclocross, or is it a young man's game?
I mean, depends on what your goals are, but yeah, I mean, if you're into cyclocross, I would definitely race cyclocross. Um, if you're trying to reach like the top level, uh, older athletes tend to you're gonna see people peak at an older age in longer events. So like ultra endurance events, the peak is older than in a punchier event like cyclocross.
Mhm.
So if you're asking like, I'm trying to make it as a pro, but I'm already, this old, should I do cyclocross? I would say you probably have a better chance of, and I mean, of course, it depends on your physiology. I mean, you could naturally be more set up for cyclocross as opposed to long distance events. But you would, if you're already at a certain age, you'd probably have a better chance of making it in ultra endurance events than a punchy sport like cyclocross. But that being said, if you enjoy cyclocross, race cyclocross. Who cares how old you are?
Yeah, it's all about having fun, right? Get out
Right.
there and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Then my last question I'm going to ask is from Ross Nordell. What's your 2021 goal?
For YouTube or for racing or anything, all.
An open-ended question, whatever you think
All
the
right.
answer should be.
Um, I'm really hoping that the like gravel race season is in full force this year because I from a racing perspective, I'm kind of transitioning into being more of a gravel racer, and I really want to make a name for myself in gravel racing and, get podiums at these big gravel races, maybe win one of these big gravel races. So I would say that's probably from a racing perspective that'd be my goal. From a YouTube perspective, um, I think that it's, I'll probably hit 100,000 subscribers in the near future. I don't necessarily. I think I was I was much more concerned with the subscriber count when I first started the channel, and at this point, it's kind of like it's kind of on autopilot. Like the subscribers are going to roll in at the pace that they roll in. If I happen to have a video that pops off, then they might roll in a little faster. If I have a month where my videos aren't performing as well, they might roll in a little slower. But they're gonna come in at the rate that they come in. So I don't, I just want to continue to grow the channel.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the channel grow very much so as well. It's an interesting one, and honestly, I learned a lot just researching and learning about it. I mean, I'm not a great cyclist, but I this summer when I tend to ride more because it's outside. Right now, there's about I don't know a crap ton of snow on the ground where I'm at, and I don't really want to ride outside because it's freezing. But when I am, I'll come back to the channel and definitely increase my cycling from the channel. So anyone else listening can do that. And if you have any aspirations to do that, but there's also great things to learn just about being a stronger athlete in general, learning about pacing in any way. You can take these same concepts that you talk about on your channel and increase any athletic event that you're doing. So
Yeah, I do get comments from runners, from triathletes saying, I've gotten comments from runners saying, I don't even ride a bike, but I learned stuff from your channel. So that's cool to see.
yeah,
Um,
it definitely crosses all those platforms. Especially, I'm sure you're getting a lot of triathletes on
yeah.
the channel because
Mhm.
behind it's a runner sport. You're going to get
Mhm.
run down by anyone. So if you can increase your biking, obviously swimming is going to be there. If you read any triathlon magazines, like 80% swimming, then 10% biking or
Mhm.
more. But yeah, everything there can translate to all three of those disciplines. So it's probably you get a lot of triathletes looking for those questions that you have in your titles.
Yeah. And
So
I've gotten triathletes coming to me for coaching, like they want me to coach them, and
That's cool.
I've never done a triathlon in my life, and I usually, when those people come to me, I tell them you should probably find someone with triathlon experience, because like, I mean, I could write a training plan for you, but at the end of the day, you want your coach to know what it's like to do whatever it is you're training for, as opposed to not having any idea. Like, I have no idea what it's like to do a swimming race. I've never done a swimming race in my life. So if somebody was like, how do you train for swimming? How do you prepare for the swim leg of the triathlon? I'd be like, I don't know.
go swim.
Yeah.
It starts there. I mean, that's funny, and because your fifth highest video has, if you do the like hover over it, there's swimming in the beginning of it.
Which video is that?
How to do base training the right way.
Yeah, there was a couple studies in that video about triathletes, I believe, or maybe they might have even been about swimmers, because I'll use studies from runners and swimmers and cross country skiers and rowers, just because they're all endurance sports. So if I'm talking about that and I'm referencing a study, I'll include a little background clip of a swimmer or skier.
Well, if you ever want to do a triathlon, let me know. I'll do it with you. Fun.
Okay.
Be fun to get past like 8 minutes into the ride. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I'd be the last one out of the water.
It doesn't matter, man. You got speed on the bike and you got endurance. So there's and it's all about, it's the same reason like you said about the guy who should do cyclocross. It's just for fun. It's about a great community and getting out there.
Mhm.
And you get to the race and literally there's people who have never done a swim before in open water and they're going to do it that day. There's people who are riding um, beach cruiser bikes for this.
Mhm.
There's like people who walk the whole run. It's just about finishing the race. So
Right. Right.
um, hey man, this is awesome. It was great to hear the stories about how you grew your channel and how you got into cycling as well as into YouTube and the choices behind it and explaining why and how the methodical person behind the channel and the research about your history makes total sense. When I was watching it before I did research, I was like, man, this has got to be like super boring to do all this research. But if that was like your major, you're into this the science behind it, so it makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
great.
thanks, Dylan.
And yeah, if you ever want to do a try, let me know. I'm down to do it. Um,
Yeah, I'll let you know.
so if anyone needs training for cycling, definitely hit him up. We'll put a link to his website in the bio, as well as we'll put his Instagram, his Strava, his Twitter, and his Facebook page. So reach out to him, watch his videos, obviously subscribe to the channel, grow the channel, and thanks so much for listening.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dylan.